Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-anbiya wal mursaleen. Nabiyyina Muhammadin alayhi salatu wa tamu taslim. Wa ala alihi al-tahirin wa ala ashabihi al-tayyibin wa man istanna bi sunnatihim ila yawm al-din. Thumma amma ba'd. So we begin as we should and as we always do with the name of Allah, the most beneficent and especially merciful. And we ask Him and Him alone to send His peace and blessings upon our dear and beloved teacher, leader and guide, and the best of examples, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his pure family, his good companions, and any and all of those who would attempt to follow in their footsteps until the day that we meet our Creator. Allahumma ameen. As to what follows. So, inshaAllah, we're going to be covering the Tafsir of Suratul Kafiroon, the 109th Surah of the Quran. Although it's only 6 ayat, it is nonetheless deeply important to the belief of the Muslims, the understanding of the Muslims, and the practice of the Muslims, and how they understand their faith, how they understand their rituals and their prayers, their sacrifices, and their entire religion. Right? It is deeply important in spite of there just being 6 ayat. So some of the things that we're going to be covering bi'idhnillahi ta'ala are the names of the surah, some of the virtues and the blessings and the kind of like standout or unique things about this surah in particular versus others. And then from there, why was this surah revealed? What's the background behind the surah, or the backdrop and the story behind it? Inshallah, or what's known as asbab al-nuzul, right? Which the means, or the cause rather, the cause of revelation, right? Like I said, what's the story behind it? And then of course, the surah itself, and going through what is very important, lessons and takeaways. You know, one of the things that we mentioned, one of the objectives of this class and this course is that we try to look at the Quran as being like, subhanAllah, today I was in an art class and the students had to research a particular country, and one of the students, he asked me, he said, "Pop quiz, what is the constitution of said country?" Right? He was talking about KSA, or the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And at least in theory and on paper, it is the Quran. That is what is their stated constitution. And what we want as Muslims is that is our, in theory, that our daily life practices, how we live our daily life, how we conduct our businesses, how we have our side hustles, how we have our marriages, how we raise our children, how we deal with our enemies, how we deal with community, how we deal with everything. That our constitution is the what? The Quran. That it's practical. That every facet of our life, it's not just a holy, sacred book that has maybe a special place on the shelf where it's put in the highest position, or that it is, you know what I'm saying, come Ramadan, where it's just like, you dust it off, right, and then you read it, or just on Jumu'ah, you know, for those who come a little bit early for Jumu'ah, or while you're waiting for the khatib, and then, you know, I'm sitting here, so I might as well either read Quran on my phone or read the Mus'haf, right, but then that's it. And that's not what we want. We want it that when we are living our daily lives, right, that we have practical, actionable, you know, things that we have from the Quran so that we can implement and practice it, right? Excuse me. So, without further ado then, so we'll just jump right into it, inshallah. The first thing, the surah, is some of the names of the surah, all right? There are at least 5 or 6 that are mentioned in the Tafsir. I'm only mentioning 3. Remember, you know, the information and what we're bringing here is not exhaustive. We're not trying to inundate you with a whole bunch of information, but just trying to give you a touch and a taste, right, of what the Tafsir is. But the focus is on what? right? The lessons and takeaways, right? But then also giving you, like I said, a touch and a taste of what's in the tafsir. So we got three. The first one, the most obvious one, everybody should know. The name of the surah is what? Al-Kafiroon, right? The disbelievers. And this, of course, any mushaf you were to pick up, the majority of the tafsir, right? The books of tafsir from, ancient traditional scholars, right? Up until today, you're going to find that name for the surah, Al-Kafiroon. Whether it's Suyuti, whether it's Imam al-Tabari and his Jami' al-Bayan, or any other, right? And so on, yeah. So, Al-Kafiroon, the disbelievers. And the reason for that, it's expressly mentioned in the surah, right? That word. And oftentimes you find surah or chapters taking their name from words or something that occurred in the chapter itself. So for example, in Suratul Baqarah, right? It's named the heifer or the female cow or the calf, right? Because there's a whole story in there with Bani Israel where they were commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Via Musa alayhi salam, an tadbahu baqarah. They were commanded to slaughter a cow. But there's a whole story revolving around that. And that's where it gets its name from. In spite of the fact that it's one of the longest surah in the Quran, that's not the only story that's in there or the only topic that's in there, but it's taken from there. Surah Yusuf, for example, and that's one of the few surahs like from beginning to end where it's one cohesive story, right? But it's obviously, he's the protagonist, he's the main character in the story, he's the main person that's talked about in that, and it's all about him. That's where it gets its name, and so on, right? Al-Kafiroon, in that instance, is no different. The word is mentioned in the surah. Play it. Second one, Al-Ibadah. Al-Ibadah, right? Which means worship, right? Worship. And this is because, right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and by extension, everyone who comes after him, his followers, the Sahaba, ridwanullahi alayhim, and then all the believers after that, to announce that they will never compromise in their worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That they will never compromise in their worship. Because if you look at it, right, La a'budu ma ta'budun. I don't worship what you worship. And whatever it is that you're worshiping, that's not the same thing what I worship. And I will never worship what you worship, and likewise for you. You're never going to worship what I'm worshiping, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and expressly, you need to explicitly let them know what is up. There is no compromising when it comes to our ibadah, right? And that's why you get the word or the name or the title, Al-Ibadah. Wait, that's the second one, right? Third one is Al-Ikhlas. And before I go on, Al-Ikhlas. Isn't that the name of another surah? Qul huwallahu ahad, right? Now, what's mentioned in the tafsir as to why that surah is called Ikhlas and this surah is called Ikhlas, before I mention that, what does Ikhlas even mean? Then we'll get to that part. What does Ikhlas mean? Sincerity? Okay, play it. It does mean sincerity, but the word is from khallasa yukhallisu. It means to clean something and to purify it, right? That it's not mixed with anything else. No additives, no preservatives, no GMOs, nothing. It's not mixed with anything, all right? And actually, when something goes through a process of being purified and cleaned, like if you were, anybody ever had honey from like back home, or like honey, raw honey, like straight from the farm? You have, right? Yeah. Okay. What did it look like when you got it? The raw honey, before it's processed.
It looked not so delicious.
It doesn't look like that golden liquid, right? Yeah. What does it look like?
Well, yeah, some question was in there. It looked like it was a
there was trash? I don't know what farm you was going to, I think. So you're saying there was little candy wrappers in there? And
not in that way.
Okay.
It kind of looked dirty, that's what I would say. Like you had some, what do you call it? Not the honey itself, but...
The beeswax?
Yeah, that's how
what they make their little homes out of, and where they make the honey. Yeah, it's beeswax.
Oh, thought that was trash. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not trash. It's the beeswax, right? That's when it's unprocessed, when nothing has been done to it, right? And and it doesn't make you wanna, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't look appetizing, right? Matter of fact, I remember I had gotten honey from my grandmother, right, from Ethiopia, right? My mom had went back and she brought it back, and it was, raw pure honey. It still had little bee legs in it, little bee wings, little chunks of bee in there and stuff like that, right? Because it's unrefined, right? And when it goes through ikhlas, right, all of that is separated and cleaned out, right? So the beeswax is melted out, right? Maybe you use some type of sift or whatever, right, to get out all that stuff, right? And then what you have left is that, what we're used to when you go to the store is that golden liquid, right? Because it's gone through that process of ikhlas, right? Of being purified and cleaned. And so, right, typically when you hear ikhlas, and you're talking about sincerity, meaning that the intention, the niyyah that you have, they say you have to have ikhlas in your worship, you have to have ikhlas in your ibadah, your recitation of Quran, what they mean is your niyyah, your intention, right, has been cleaned and purified. And just like we mentioned, like that honey, and so now it's pure, it has ikhlas. Now it's pure, clean, right, and refined. Does that make sense, y'all? Okay, so now, the scholars, they mention, right, why is Suratul Ikhlas, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, why is it called Ikhlas? Because, first of all, what is even the entire subject matter of that surah? What's the entire subject matter? It's about what?
The oneness of Allah.
It's about Allah. The entire subject matter of that surah, Suratul Ikhlas, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, is about Allah. That's it. And because it's only about Allah, there's no halal, there's no haram, there's no about stories of the ancient past and its people, and if you follow Allah, this is what you're going to get, and if you disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's going to happen and what you're going to get. None of that. It's all about Allah. Nani ikhlas at-tawheed, right? That it is purely about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's it. Whereas this surah, likewise, also purely about the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that it's only for Him exclusively, not mixed with anything else. There's no qashm in it, all right? Nothing else in it, just worship of Allah, right? And so one is ikhlas of tawheed, and the other is ikhlas of ibadah, right? So if you think about it, one is about our belief, ikhlas in our belief, and the other is ikhlas in our ritual, worship, prayers, and practices, right? When it comes to the deen. Is that clear, y'all? Tayyib. So now we have three names. What are they? Ibrahim. Go ahead, Sheikh. Al-Ibadah. Al-Ikhlas. And Al-Kafiroon. Ahsant. MashaAllah. Khair. Jazakallah khair. So, next thing now are some of the virtues and blessings of this surah. Number one, there is that it's the equivalent of a quarter of the Quran. So it's the same hadith that we mentioned last week in reference to Surah Al-Nasr. This hadith is in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, and it's narrated by Anas ibn Malik. A man came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet alayhi salatu inquired to him, "Are you married?" He said, "No, I'm not married. I'm a messenger of Allah." And then he said, "And I don't have anything to get married with." And so the Prophet ﷺ started asking him, "Well, don't you have this surah? Don't you know this surah? I.e., don't you have it memorized? You know these surahs by heart?" Right? And he mentions Suratul Ikhlas, and it's equivalent to how much of the Quran, everybody? 1/3. Thuluth of the Quran. Right? Again, speaking of the virtue and the blessings of that surah and how great it is. Right? And then he also asked him, "Don't you have Surah Al-Nasr?" And then that's where he says a quarter of the Quran. And he also asked him, "Don't you know Qul Ya Ayyuhal Kafiroon?" Right? And each one he says, "Yes, I know that surah. Yes, I know that surah." Right? And then the Prophet ﷺ responds when he gets to Qul Ya Ayyuhal Kafiroon, Rubu' al-Quran. So this surah is equivalent to a quarter of the Quran, right? In its blessings. Now, طيب, and that's in Sunan al-Tirmidhi. And then the second thing that we want to mention about the virtues of the surah, a man, he came to the Prophet of Allah, and this is also in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, and he asked the Messenger of Allah, Ya Rasulullah, what should I mention when going to bed every night? Right? If I go to lay down and go to sleep. And the Prophet ﷺ told him to read قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ, right? Read this, and he read to the end of it, and he said, it is you are freeing yourself from shirk, right? And so there's a few things that we take from it, right? Aside from the fact that it is you on a nightly basis affirming to yourself that I am free from shirk, and I have nothing to do with it, and I have nothing to do, and I'm free from that, right? And that's like a nightly, almost like a daily affirmation that you're reminding yourself and you're affirming to yourself, right? I have my deen, I have my faith, I have my worship, right? And that's worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's not mixing or melding or some type of interfaith. We're all the same type of deal. You're nightly reminding yourself. So it's a nightly affirmation. And then same thing, a part of that is that it's a part of, it should be a part of at least, your nightly routine, right? If you ever have heard about people saying like, I don't get good sleep, right? And of course, you know, sleep is one of the most important things that you need as a human being, right? It is something that is it's necessary, it's a necessity. You cannot go, you know, a few days except, right, that you will start to have diminished brain function. And if you go even longer, you can start hallucinating, right? And you can even go crazy. Right, it hurts you at work, it hurts you when you're thinking while you're at school, it hurts in so many, because it is an absolute, essential, necessary thing that you need. And you'll have some people who complain of having bad dreams and waswasa, or having unsettled sleep. They can't sleep well, right? One of the things that they may not consider, but should look at, is what is your nightly routine when you're going to bed? Is it that I look at my phone until I fall asleep? Is it that I'm, you know what I'm saying, messaging and texting? Some people even work until they go to sleep. Some people looking at some screen, whether it's watching, you know what I'm saying, Netflix or whatever it is, movie shows, etc. Or like I said, just scrolling, right? But many don't think to look at, right, what might be the cause of their disturbed sleep or nightmares or shaitan or whatever. And if you look at, if you have, the Prophet ﷺ had a nightly routine. So some of those things, and matter of fact, I'm willing to bet that many of you know some of those things. What are some things that the Prophet ﷺ used to do, and he taught his companions to do, which in turn should be us, right, that we should also be doing? What are some of the things that he would do before you go to sleep? Yes?
He would dust off his bed before he would sleep.
Yes, very good. Prophet ﷺ said you should, right? Wipe it off, dust it off. Very good. Now,
read a dua.
Read a dua?
Yeah.
Okay. Tayyib. Any specific dua?
The dua before you go to sleep.
Yes, there are a number of adhkar and ad'iyah, right, that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that you're supposed to do before you go to sleep. Okay, good. But what are some specific ones we want? Now.
Recite Surah Al-Mulk.
Surah?
Mulk.
Suratul Mulk in its entirety. Yes. Now, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that there is a tremendous reward in doing so. Suratul Mulk. Yes. Yes, brother.
Where's mine?
My fault. I thought you did. Play it. Go ahead.
Make wudu.
No?
Like making wudu.
Making wudu. Play it. Okay.
Reading the 3 ma'awadat and blowing in your hand in.
So everybody who has been coming to the class should know what the mu'awwidat are, but would you mention it just for us?
Suratul Nas, Suratul Falaq, Suratul Ikhlas.
And Suratul Ikhlas. Ahsant. Naam. Jazakallah khair. And doing what?
Reading into your hand.
Yep, into your hands like this, yeah. Alright. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions doing what's called nafat, which is it's like dry spittle or dry spit. So you're not actually like, but you're like this. So you do 3 times, read those surahs, right? And he would wipe, starting from his head, all the way down to wherever he would reach from his body, right? So you don't have to wipe all the way down, get up, to your feet. It's just where his arms reach to, right? However long that is. Like, now, anything else? Yes.
The last 2 of Baqarah.
The last 2 from Suratul Baqarah. Anything else? And which, yes, by the way, no. Sleeping on your right side. Yes, sir. And Ayatul Kursi, right? Now, if you look, right, there are a number of different things, right? You could be doing, and there's more, by the way. There's more. But if you look at it, you can have a whole night routine, right, prior to going to sleep. And all of it revolves around you, right, doing 2 things. One is remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and reminding yourself, right? That's why I called it like an affirmation, right? Because you're affirming and reminding and reaffirming yourself every night. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ, right? اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ الْحَيُّ الْقَيُّومُ. You're reminding yourself of all those things, right? Again, assuming that you, right, know what you're saying. But the second thing is also following the legacy of the Prophet Muhammad which is also important, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You have the best example in the Prophet Muhammad, which interestingly enough, when you hear about people talking about high value men, what does it mean to be a man, etc., and you would think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already answered that question for us. What is a real man? And you have people debating, arguing, and I can see non-Muslims debating and arguing that, but you even have Muslims arguing and debating on what is a man, what he should be like, how he should be, or even a woman, and what a woman is, and what she should be like, and how she should carry herself and behave, and so on and so forth. When you have the best example to ever walk the face of the earth with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that includes even in his habit of how he went to sleep. So lastly, there's the third one now, is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to, both in Hajj and in Umrah, have it as a part and part of the rituals of Hajj and Umrah. So what that is that when he would make tawaf, right, for anybody who has made Hajj or who's made Umrah, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless all of you and all of us to be able to go to his house, Allahumma ameen, is that one of the things that he would do after making the tawaf is that he would go behind what is called Maqam Ibrahim, right, which is, it's almost like I don't know how to describe it, a kiosk almost, right, which is like this glass case that also has like, brass edgings around it, and it's supposed to be encased inside of it are the imprints of the feet of Ibrahim alayhi salam. That is what's supposed to be in there, right? So if you were to ever stop and look at it, right, on the inside, it's something that looks like encased 2 footprints, and that's supposed to be the footprints of Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was building the Kaaba with his son Ismail, right? That's what that's supposed to be, right? And the maqam, meaning the standing place or the standing station, right? Ibrahim, hence the term Maqam Ibrahim. So the Prophet ﷺ, right, after making tawaf, he would go behind that, so then that it is between him, it's between him and the Kaaba. So in the middle, right, you have the Kaaba, Maqam Ibrahim, and the Prophet ﷺ standing behind it, and he would pray 2 rak'ah. This is both in Hajj and Umrah, right? And then he would always read, right? He would always read قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ and قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, right? The 2 ikhlases, right? قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ and قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, right? And then also, so you have it as part of the rituals of Hajj and Umrah, right? Again, the fact that the Prophet ﷺ consistently used to do that and didn't leave that off, right? Shows the significance and the importance of that. As I mentioned already, you have one purifying our belief and our understanding of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and then the other is purifying our relationship with Him. Because it's through our worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's our relationship with Him. Because we recognize that He is one, that He's our creator, our sustainer, our provider, He's the owner of the dominion, He's omnipotent, all of that. And so the way that I live that, express that, manifest that, is through my worship. And both of those things, they must be purely, exclusively, only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like we mentioned earlier, unadulterated, raw, uncut, no GMOs, no preservatives. Only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then, fourthly, and this is the last thing, it also used to be the habit of the Prophet ﷺ, in the Sunnah for Fajr, he used to read Suratul Kafiroon, and also the Sunnah for Maghrib, right? That he used to read Suratul Kafiroon, right? And this is something that that we should try to do as much as possible, right? Of course, this is why it's important for us to learn, right, the legacy of the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. But in these things, because oftentimes you see that people leave those things and abandon those things, right? Again, it's something subtle, it's something small, right? But it's in those subtle, small things that you keep building, and keep getting stronger, and keep getting closer and closer to, right, the practices and the habits and the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the next thing we go through is the asbab al-nuzul, or why was this surah revealed. And this is mentioned in a number of tafsir, and I mentioned a disclaimer, right? يعني كلها ما يخلو من المقال. That a number of them are stated to be weak. However, Shaykh Al-Bani rahimahullah, he mentions, due to the fact that there are multiple narrations, all in general saying and stating the same thing, that this is considered acceptable. And he mentions it in his Asila Nabawiyya Sahiha, Shaykh Al-Bani rahimahullah. But at any rate, what is mentioned is that Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, Al-Aas ibn Wa'il, Al-Aswad ibn al-Muttalib, Umayr ibn Khalaf, and others. And these are like the Sanadid al-Quraysh. These are like the leaders and the heads of the Quraysh. Alright? They have already been trying as much as they possibly can in every possible way to dissuade the Prophet Muhammad, to discourage his followers, and in every possible way, right? And by disparaging him, slandering him, i.e. lying about him, and saying, for example, that he is, that he's impoverished, that he's poor, right? Like we mentioned in Suratul Masad, that the wife of Abu Lahab, right, she used to mock him and be like, you know what I'm saying? Because, and the significance of that is, right, usually people want to follow the rich, the powerful, right, the famous people, the quote-unquote important people. And so they were saying, like, when people would come, delegations, leaders, and stuff like that to Mecca, like, look, he's broke, he's poor anyways, you know what I'm saying? He ain't got nothing, right? Don't listen to him. Or that he's crazy, right? That he's possessed, that he's mentally ill, right? Then you had, of course, now, at least in these early stages, because this is a Surah Makkiyah, right? They're not outright physically attacking and fighting Prophet Muhammad. He still has the protection of his uncle, Abu Talib, right? Who is the son of Abdul Muttalib, who is like, you know, the known, respected, he's like the OG of the Arabs. That's the only, he's the OG, and everybody respected him, and everybody respected his sons, his family, and his tribe. So if you're from his tribe, we can't. That's the OG. We can't touch him, and we can't touch his son, and we can't touch his nephew because that's Abu Talib, and he's the son of Abdul Muttalib. We can't do nothing. So they attack the weak, the slaves, the servants, the people who have no tribe, right? That's who they attack. Al-Muhim. So they've been trying all this time, and that's failing. They're not getting any success. The Prophet ﷺ, he's not wavering. He's not, being shaken, by whatever they're trying to do. And so they try to switch it up. And they try to bribe the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And so they say, listen, if what you want is money, we'll give you that. You'll be one of the richest men in Mecca. You want leadership? Khalas, tusharik fi, right? We'll share the leadership with you, right? If it's women that you want, look, you can have your pick of the lot. You can marry whichever woman you want to, if that's what it's all about. But the one condition that we have, لا تسبوا آلهتنا, do not curse our gods and don't speak ill of our gods, right? Just don't do that, right? And they add something else. In another narration, it says that they say that, listen, why don't we just do this? You leave our gods alone. Don't say nothing bad about them. And here's what we'll do. We will worship your gods for a year, or your God, for a year, right? Which is really, that's nothing out of the way for the Quraysh, because they already believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? They already believed in Allah Azza wa Jalla. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that multiple times in the Quran. وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَهُم, what are they going to say? They're going to say Allah. It said if you ask them who created you, who made you, they're going to respond. Their response is going to be, it's Allah who made us. So, but the problem is they're worshiping other gods aside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? لِيُقَرِّبُنَا إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَى. They're just saying, look we're just doing, because we're lowly, nobody. It's the same argument as Christians make as to why they have to have Jesus. Because we're, right, with the sin carrying over from Adam, we're inherently evil, we're bad, we're nobodies, we're lower than dirt, so they need the blood of Jesus Christ, right, who is holy, immaculate conception, and so on, and we got to go through him to get to Allah. The Quraysh had a similar argument. We just praying to these different idols and stuff like that to get us closer to Allah, to be like, to be our little, like our connect. That's our plug. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we go to him, then he's going to plug us in directly right to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's essentially what they're trying to say. My point, though, is that that's not that much of a stretch for them to say, look, we'll worship your God for 1 year, but look, Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you worship our God for 1 year. And they think they're being rational. They think they're being pragmatic. They say, look, because if we worship what you got, and if what you have, ep.8, khalas. If what you have in your hands is good, then we get a share of it. And if what we have is what's right and what's good, then boom, you got a share in it too, because we did both of them. We've covered all our bases, right? So I want you to imagine, right? This is what their rationale is, essentially. Imagine like an airplane, all right? And I'm sure many of you have, flown on an airplane and whatnot. But if you've ever experienced like some really strong turbulence, anybody ever been on a plane when it starts shaking and stuff, right? And when you see that, what's the reaction of virtually everybody on the plane? Huh?
Sure.
What?
Nah.
You're scared.
Panic.
9.5 times out of 10, or let's just go ahead and say 10 times out of 10, almost everybody on the plane is scared, right? No matter what the captain says, he's like, hey, sorry everybody, we're experiencing a little turbulence, but don't worry, it'll be over in a minute or two. But every time that plane, everybody's like, and then everybody, they even be saying like, oh my God, My point though is that they're what? They're scared, right? Even as a Muslim, you might be scared, and that's natural. That's okay. But now imagine somebody's on that plane, it's shaking, right? and the turbulence doesn't stop. And somebody, he's trying to hedge his bets. He's trying to hedge his bets. And he says, "Oh Buddha, I'm calling on you, oh Buddha, please, please. Don't let this crash." Well, yeah, and then he says, "All right, I'm done with that. Jesus, please. No offense, Buddha. Jesus, please help me out. I'm saying I'm calling on you and you. All right? And then he goes to Allah. Ya Allah. Ya Allah. No offense, Buddha. No offense, Jesus. This is what their rationale. And look at it, because it's silly. It's silly for them, but this is what they're thinking. They're saying, look, right? Now somebody who does that, he's saying one of them got to be right. One of them got to be right. And so if I pray to all of them, then I got to get one of them. Y'all understand? And this is essentially what they're saying. Look, Muhammad, what's the big deal? You know what I'm saying? Look it, we'll pray to your gods, you pray to our gods, and if what you got is good, boom, we all win because we prayed with you like you told us to. And then if what we got is good, boom, you win too. It's a win-win. And you have to understand, brothers and sisters, subhanAllah. Now, although I am making, a little bit light of, right? You got to understand, this is where we as Muslims are distinct and different from other religions. There is a clear line when it comes to our worship and our faith and our ibadah, right? And so, when they make that suggestion, when they say that to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, immediately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, because they said, you worship what we worship, and we worship what you worship. And Allah says, you tell them, Muhammad, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ, you tell those disbelievers, لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ, you make sure that you tell them, and you call it like it is, and you say it like it is. They are disbelievers. You call a spade a spade. I don't worship what you worship. I.e., we're not the same. وَلَا, and then you don't worship what I worship. We don't worship the same thing. You might even say you believe in Allah, but what you're worshiping is not the same as what I'm worshiping. All right, y'all understand that? This is very, very important. And so, but this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ, to the end of the ayah. Right? And this is why this surah came down. So, to summarize, right? They tried to negotiate with the Prophet ﷺ and essentially bribe him. They started by bribing him and then tried to negotiate with him. And the negotiation and the compromise, and this is a very important, right? This is a very important word to this surah. They are asking him to compromise his faith and his worship. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds, unequivocally, there is no compromise. So now we get to the actual surah, and if anybody could help us out, alhamdulillah, I see there's more people today with Masahif and Qur'an. Jazakallah khair, says,
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
فإذا قرأت القرآن فاستعذ بالله. أعوذ بالله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل يا أيها الكافرون لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد لكم دينكم ولي دين.
Ahsant. MashaAllah. Allahumma barik. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and make you from the Hufaz Kitabillah. Allahumma ameen. طيب. Somebody want to read the translation, inshallah? No, fadl.
O disbelievers, I do not worship what you worship, nor are you worshippers of what I worship, nor will I be a worshipper of what you worship, nor will you be worshippers of what I worship. For you is your religion, and for me is my religion.
No. طيب. Jazakallah khair. Allah bless you, akhi. Allahumma ameen. طيب, so the first ayah, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be explicit, to say, to be straightforward and straight to the point. You tell them, oh, you disbelievers, right? And so one of the first things we want to understand is the importance of speaking the truth and calling a spade, right? The Prophet ﷺ is told to call the Quraysh, right? And address them with reality, that they're disbelievers, right? And before I go on, when we say disbeliever or kafir or kafiroon, what does that mean? What does the word kafir or kafiroon mean? So first of all, the word kafiroon is the plural of kafir. And the word kafir is from the word kafara, which means to cover something up. It means to deny something, to block something, right? When someone, right, in those terms, it means they're covering something up, blocking something, or denying it, right? And in terms of istilahat, in technical terms, it is someone who is denying, right, the belief in Allah and His Messenger and everything that comes with that. It's someone denying, right, and covering up, right, the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and everything that comes with that. And why would we say they're covering it up, right? Well, because our understanding in Islam is that everybody is born with an innate instinct. Every single human being is born with a natural instinct to worship, acknowledge a higher power, something greater than themselves, yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is natural, this is normal in every single human being. Now, it may be due to their environment, it may be due to their habits and their practices, that innate instinct and that nature is changed and warped and distorted, right? But nonetheless, every child that is born is on that innate natural disposition or instinct. And this is from the words of the Prophet ﷺ in Sunan Abi Dawood, when he mentions, كُلُّ مَوْلُودٍ يُولِدُ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ, that every child that is born with this natural instinct, the fitrah, right? فَأَبَوَاهُ, and it's their parents who change them to be either a Jew or a Christian or a Magian, right? And so when you think about, right, is it nature or nurture, right, in terms of how people are, how they behave, and who they eventually come to be, right? In Islam, it's balanced. We look at both of those things. There is a natural instinct that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts. Naturally, human beings are good. They want good. They're inclined towards good. And they're inclined towards the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But it's their environment that can impact and change and affect that, right? And so now, when someone is denying, who says I'm an atheist, or they say they worship something else, they are covering up. They are denying that natural instinct that is in them, all right? So when they disbelieve, they are covering up and denying that natural instinct. Does that make sense, y'all? So that's the meaning of the word kafir or kufar. Now, some people might say, oh, that's derogatory, or that's disrespectful, right? To call non-Muslims kufar, or to call them kafir, right? Or to say, ya ayyuhal kafirun. But who is telling and giving the command? Who is giving the command, y'all? And who, at least at the time that it was revealed, who is he talking to? No. He's not talking to the Quraysh. Who did Allah command? He's telling Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you tell them. Allah is the one giving the command, and He's telling Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam how to address the non-Muslims and the disbelievers, right? And this, of course, the Quraysh. But is this surah? And what we got to understand, is this surah only for the Quraysh? No. It's for everybody and anybody who disbelieves in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who denies his oneness, who denies his names, his attributes, that he's the only one that deserves to be worshipped, the day of judgment, qadr, etc. Anybody who denies that, they're a kafir. And it's simply stating a fact. It does not mean that you're being derogatory, disrespectful. It's just meaning it is what it is. I don't know how else to say it. It is what it is, right? So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells me to say. And what I want, one of the lessons we take from this, brothers and sisters, is that we need to be proud of our faith and to not be shy about our faith, right? Sometimes it may not be quote unquote politically correct. Sometimes it might be uncomfortable, right? In today's parlance, in today's, language and the way that people are talking, right? It is what it is. If you're Muslim, this is what it is. Does that mean that you go around slinging that and throwing it in everybody's face? No. But let's say, for example, you might be invited to a place to speak, to represent Islam and the Muslims. Do you say that we're all brothers and sisters and that we're all the same? Hasha lillah. Right? There's even a movement, and there's a technical term for it, it's called perennialism, which essentially, what that means is, that's a fancy word for saying that no religion is wrong and we're all the same, or if you think about it, like a mountain. All paths lead to the top of the mountain. That's an expression they use. And it's all the same. All the Christians are going to go to Jannah. All the Buddhist people are going to go to Jannah. All the Muslims are going to go to Jannah. All the atheists, everybody's going to go. It's all good because they're all the same anyways. And so, subhanAllah, when you just stop and think about that for a minute, you'd be like, subhanAllah, you telling me right now, somebody who is praying to a cow is going to be rubbing elbows with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu in Jannah? You telling me, somebody who's praying to, whatever, some type of idol, that he's going to be right there, with Muhammad al-Fatih? Well, I can't say Muhammad al-Fatih, but let's say, right, the other Sahaba, Usama bin Zayd, you tell me he's going to be there with Umar ibn Khattab, who sacrificed everything for Islam, and La ilaha Muhammad Rasulullah, who died a martyr? You telling me they're going to be rubbing elbows and kicking it in Jannah together? They're the same? SubhanAllah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even said for people who are Muslim, they're not the same. قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم. Allah says they were brand new Arabs, brand new Muslims, right? This is in Surah Al-Hujurat. They just came out the desert. It's the 9th year of the Hijrah. So the Prophet ﷺ, it's a year before he dies, and now they're coming in droves and in waves, and they're saying, we believe, we're Muslims. And they said, not only are we just Muslims, they said, we're believers. And Allah corrects them and say, nah, hold on now. Y'all saying y'all are believers, but y'all aren't believers yet. Islam and Iman, they haven't penetrated your heart and your bones and your DNA. Not like that yet. Not like Abu Bakr, who gave everything. Not like Umar ibn Khattab, who gave half of his wealth. Not like Uthman ibn Affan, who on multiple occasions supported and sponsored multiple armies entirely by himself. Saddles, swords, spears, arrows, bows, food, everything. He sponsored everything on multiple occasions with the Prophet ﷺ. Y'all, you're not there yet. Let alone, and he's speaking to people who said what? La ilaha Muhammad Rasulullah. And then you have some people who come and say in today's time that non-Muslims, right? And more often than not, this is a desire in people to want to blend in, to assimilate, right? And to be like everybody else. And a part and parcel of Islam, brothers and sisters, it is a reality, it is a fact that you must accept. You must tell your wife and your kids, you are different. You are not the same. Right? You are not the Islam is different. Right? بدأ الإسلام غريبا فسيعود غريبا فطوبى للغرباء. Islam started off as something strange, right? And it will return back to being something strange. You're not always gonna fit in. And if you don't make sure to work at removing that from your children, from yourselves, you will end up in slow, incremental ways, sacrificing, modifying, changing, adding and subtracting to the deen to where it becomes something that is not what was brought by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to be proud of our Islam. And sometimes you just gotta be straightforward and explicit. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Again, that does not mean rude, that does not mean be disrespectful, but it does mean قُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. You gotta be straightforward. Because look, he didn't say, Ya O Muhammad, believe this. He didn't say, Oh Muhammad, have this in your heart. He said, say it out loud, expressly. So, now being proud of our faith and not trying to hide it, not trying to modify it or change it, right? But being proud. Tell you. The next thing. لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he says, listen, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands him to say and to tell them, listen, I don't worship what you worship. And you don't worship what I worship. And this is important, brothers and sisters. This is one of the fundamental, if not the fundamental thing of Islam. When you look at the Shahada, right? What is the Shahada, everyone? Alhamdulillah, at least somebody knows. MashaAllah. We had maybe 2 people who said, everybody, what's the Shahada, y'all? Don't just get the ajr from saying La ilaha illallah. Just go ahead and say it. Jazakallah khair, akhi. Again, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. May Allah bless all of you. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. So look, that statement, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, and the Ashhadu, it means I bear witness, I testify, as if you were in court, right? I testify, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. You're testifying in front of everybody. And you are testifying, the first part of the Shahada, right? One is about Allah, the other is about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Bear witness to Allah, I bear witness to. The first part, the Shahada, comprises 2 parts. The first part of the Shahada comprises how many, Shaykh Ibrahim? How many? 2. 2 parts. It's 2 parts. La ilaha, negation. There is no God. There is no deity, right? That is worthy of worship. That's the first thing you say. Look at, that's the first thing you say for someone if they want to step into the fold of Islam. Before you even say, I believe in Allah, before you say, Allah is the true God, Allah is the one who deserves worship, the first thing you say is what? Is you negate the idea, the concept, the philosophy, the thought that there are any other gods who deserve to be worshipped. I ask you all a question. Are there other gods?
No.
So you telling me Christians don't have a God?
Yes.
You telling me Hindus, Buddhist people, they don't have gods? You telling me other religions, they don't have gods? Shinto, Jainism, they don't have gods? They don't have stuff they pray to? They do. They do have things that they pray to. And we'll say with like a lowercase g, those are their gods. A god is something that is prayed to, something that is worshipped. That is, quote unquote, a god in English, right? And even in Arabic, ilah, it's something that's prayed to and worshipped to, right? That's why it's not enough when you say the Shahada, if you translate it, it's not enough to say there is no God. But you have to fully articulate there is no God worthy of worship. There are other things that are prayed to, but they don't deserve to be worshipped and prayed to. And so the Prophet ﷺ is being commanded to unequivocally, you need to affirm that. You need to let them know, because that's what they're suggesting. That there's Allah, and they're acknowledging, yeah, we believe that there's an Allah, and we'll pray to Him for a year. But pray to these other gods for a year. And the first thing you're supposed to do in order to even be a Muslim is you have to deny and outright reject the idea that there are other gods worthy of worship. They don't deserve to be worshipped. People pray to Jesus, he doesn't deserve to be worshipped. People pray to Krishna, right? If y'all ever seen the blue guy, or Kali, the maiden of death, right? I don't know if y'all ever seen her. She's got multiple arms. She got a trident, a sword, a knife, you know what I'm saying, with some skulls or whatever. People pray to that, right? She's the god of death and destruction. People pray to that. Shiva, Brahma, all kinds of stuff. But they don't deserve to be worshipped. They don't create. They don't sustain. They don't maintain the universe. They don't keep all of this going. That's the first thing. And then after you negate that there's anything worthy of worship, illallah, you affirm that worship, prayers, sacrifice, right, is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, this speaks to the foundation of our religion, is that we have to deny there is no possibility that we can worship other things or that other religions are true. Yes, there are believers and there are non-believers. There are Muslims and there are those who are not Muslims. It's what makes a Muslim distinct and stand out. It's why, because you acknowledge that, because you believe that, accept that, and live according to that, it's that thing, right, that makes you worthy of Allah's mercy to go to paradise. Because you're going to have to go through a whole heck of a lot of stuff to go to Jannah, to be worthy of Allah's mercy. So we said how many things now? 2 things. So if you're writing this down, it is negation. And by negation, it means you are denying that there are other gods worthy of worship. And you are affirming that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserves to be worshipped. And that's the shahada, y'all. And that's why we say the fundamental of the religion. And so what comes out of that is that what? Listen, what I'm worshiping is not the same like what you're worshiping. And what you're worshiping, it's not the same like what I'm worshiping. We don't worship the same thing. And in today's time, when you think, for example, interfaith dialogue, one of the things that they'll say, some of the terms that they use, Abrahamic faiths, right? Which, if what they mean is that they all trace back to Prophet Abraham, that's acceptable. You can say that. That they all, right? He's a patriarch for all of these different religions. But does that mean we're the same? No, that does not mean Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are the same. Are there overlap? Are there some things that are similar? Yes, there are. But especially when it comes to our worship. لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد. We don't worship the same. Very, very important, brothers and sisters. Tell you. And so when we said for the, and I want to make a note about the interfaith dialogue, right? Especially when it comes to, I would say later, more so later on in high school, but especially in college, right? There are many universities and college campuses right here in Minnesota, right, that directly promote the idea and the concept of interfaith dialogue. And if someone decides that they want to engage and be involved in that, if someone is involved and engaged in that, something that you have to know and understand is this surah and the concept we just explained. It does not mean that you're going to have to go and smack some Christian or punch some Jewish person and be like, yo, hey, yeah, you Al-Kafiroon. We're not the same. Nah, don't you be saying that's not what. But if they try to say, for example, that we are all the same and we just gonna hold hands and we're gonna sing Kumbaya and let's not talk about, you know, what's after this, then you cannot be involved in that. You can't engage in that. If they do not hinder you from speaking the truth, and like I said, calling a spade a spade. I am Muslim because I believe and you are not because you believe something different. And you can make it clear, and that people who die as Muslims, bi'idhnillah, paradise, inshaAllah. And those who don't, I'm not saying specifically me that I'm going to paradise, But Allah described those who have these characteristics, they're going to Jannah. And I hope that I'm one of them. And then he described who are disbelievers. And people have these characteristics. And if they die as such, then they are going where, everyone? The hellfire. Where? Iyadu billah. May Allah protect us from the hellfire. And so, I'm just laying it out for you. وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ. And it's not on the messenger except to convey the message. So if the shoe fits, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الدِّينَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ Islam. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. And look at that lan is for the future. It will never be accepted. فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. Whoever desires or wants a religion other than Islam, Allah says, it will not be. Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, وَمَنْ يَرْغَبُ عَنْ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِهَ نَفْسَهُ. Who would want a religion other than the way of Ibrahim except for somebody who's a fool, who's an idiot, foolish? How could you want something other than this? Tell you, I just want to make sure, brothers and sisters, if you are making da'wah, if you are doing for, especially if it comes to things like social justice work, right, where it is very likely being active, being engaged, you may not be a student of knowledge, you may not be a you pray and you care and have concern about the issues and the things that are going around you, rightfully so. And you should, whether it's Muslims or non-Muslims. We should care about what's happening in this country to African Americans. We should care about what's happening to this country when it comes to, right, the things that are happening in the society. We should be caring concern. Not because they're from our tribe, not because they're from our ethnicity, but because as Muslims, right, we care about the entire society. Now, however, you do not compromise in two things, in your faith and your worship. Those two things, that is a red line. You do not compromise. Tell you. So we move on, because we're running out of time. So now the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, excuse me, commanding Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to say, so first he said, I don't worship what you worship, and you don't worship what I worship. Now, he's saying, وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدْتُمْ. And I'm not going to worship whatever it is that you're worshiping. So first he stated what it is right now, and now he's saying for the future, I'm never going to worship whatever it is that you're worshiping. And vice versa. As long as y'all keep doing what y'all doing, it's not going to be the same. You're not going to worship what I worship. Right? And so the Prophet ﷺ speaking about, Allah is telling Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, you tell him right now, you tell him what it is, and you tell him what it's going to be. That you will never back down from this, you will never stray from this, you are resolute, unwavering in your faith and your worship of Allah. And likewise, if they continue on that and they think they can bribe and negotiate and compromise their way, you're not going to worship what I worship. It's not the same thing. We're not coming. Right? We are on divergent paths. Right? But at the end of the day, right? Lakum dinukum waliyadin. For me is my way and my religion, and for you is your way and your religion. Right? And subhanAllah, this is something we have to understand, brothers and sisters, is that when making da'wah to non-Muslims, or anyone for that matter, but in particular with non-Muslims, we have to understand لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us there is no compulsion in the religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not send Islam or the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the books, right, to force people into Islam. Because then, how is that person a believer? You don't really believe, you're just being forced to, right? That's not what Allah wants. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants someone not simply to surrender their body, right? Fine, I did it. This is what you want me to do? All right, here. You want me to put this thing on my, okay, I did it. All right, now what? You want me to pray 5? All right, I did it. That person is a what? If they don't believe in their heart, that person is a what? They're a munafiq. They're a munafiq. They're just doing it because they're being forced to. And that's not what Allah wants. Allah wants people, right? Their mind, body, and soul, that you give it up willingly. Allah wants you to give it to Him. I mean, He gave it to you anyways. It belongs to Him anyways. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We belong to Allah anyways. But when you recognize and acknowledge that it's yours, Allah, and I'm willingly, I have no resistance, Islam, and I'm giving it back to you. It's for you, it's for your service, it's for whatever you want it to be, Allah. But I'm surrendering and giving it to you. That is a big ask. That's why the reward for that is what, y'all? Is Jannah. That's a big ask. And that's why so many people say no. Huh? That's why so many people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَكْثَرُهُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. So many. Because you're being asked to surrender and have no resistance. I'm giving you my heart, my mind, my body, my soul. It's all for you, Allah. It's yours anyways. Just tell me what to do. Right? So, when someone says that they're lakum dinukum waliya din, if that's what you want, khalas, we're just here to convey the message, to be clear, to be lucid, to be transparent, to not have any ulterior motives or agendas. We're not keeping like a scoreboard where we got 13 souls this month. You know what I'm saying? Alhamdulillah, takbir, Allahu Akbar. You know, we've said, nah. Which, by the way, if you see like non-Muslims, that's how non-Muslims, be moving and operating. And as Muslims, you can't. Right? Matter of fact, when you're making dawah, if you go to the state fair, for example, or you go make street dawah, or you talk to people online, or social media, or whatever it is, you don't need to be desperate. You don't need to try. All you got to do is have knowledge of what you're talking about. First and foremost, to be sincere and genuine, for the sake of Allah. Secondly, is know what you're talking about. Have knowledge when you're making dawah, calling to the deen, right? And then after that, the results are with Allah. That person believes, they don't believe, that's up to you, brother. That's up to you. Sis, after that, I did what I was supposed to. I conveyed the message. You believe? Alhamdulillah. Takbir, Allahu Akbar, welcome to the fold. You don't believe? I pray for your guidance. Because after that, it's between you and your Creator. Right? But there is no compulsion. That's number one. Number two is, if you look at it, again, being distinct. You have your way, and I have mine. But there is no blending, mixing, augmenting. We are distinct, separate, and different. So when we go to work, when you go to work, for example, or you're at school, and you ask for some concessions. Listen, it's Jummah, I gotta go. Listen, it's Eid. I remember the first time, my first year in college, I had final exams on Eid day. And I had to tell my instructor, I can't come in. I can't do it. I was like, and not only that, but you need to make some concessions. He was like, what's that? I mean, the Eid, excuse me. He was like, what's that? I said, what do you mean? What's that? There's a whole bunch of Muslims that go to the school. You don't know it. All right, no problem. Let me educate you. No problem. I'll tell you but it's like this and like this. This is Ramadan. I'm fasting. And this is where I break I can't. You know what Christmas is? If I told you got to go work on Christmas or go, you know what I'm saying, go teach on Christmas, would you do that? It's like, no, of course. I can't. Right? And not only that, you got to make some concession, right? All right, play it. So now, though, in that conversation, one of the things he was asking was like, well, other people do X, Y, and Z. Why can't you do it? And I got to tell him. Lahum dinuhum wali yadin. Look, I don't know what they doing. That's their way or whatever. But for me, I have to do like this. Because, you know what I'm saying, especially being in schools, being at work or whatever, oftentimes they're looking at, what are you talking about? Time is money. We need you to do this. We need you to work, or we need you to come in, or you have to take this test. We can't make, no. But these other people are doing it. She's saying it's okay for her to work without no hijab. Why can't you? He's saying it's okay. He don't have to go to Friday prayers. Why can't you? hey, listen, for me, this is my way, whether they're other Muslims or non-Muslims. Lahum dinuhum waliya din. They have their, but this is, it can't be, I can't change it, modify it, add it, or subtract it. And we were just talking about it before the Salah, or excuse me, after Salat al-Maghrib. This is very important, brothers and sisters. For example, especially like when you go to work, right? Sometimes they're going to tell you, you know, like you got to come in for work, or you got to come in for school, or you have to do X, Y, and Z, or you can't leave for Jumu'ah, and so on and so forth. And you have to remember, right, that Allah is telling you, you have your deen, you have your way. If whatever it is not fitting in that, you have your deen. Your choice as a believer, as a Muslim, should be clear. It should be clear. Listen, employer, I gotta go to Jumu'ah. We don't pay you to go to Jumu'ah. That's out. All right, well, listen, either you make those accommodations, we can figure something out, or what? I can't work here. I have my deen. This is more important than anything else. I'm sorry, Sister Aisha, we can't have that thing on your head. You know what I'm saying? We have a uniform policy here, and if we made accommodations for you, we gotta make accommodations for everybody else. Hey, for them is their deen. They might be cool with it, whatever it is that they're doing, but for me is my deen, I can't. That's not possible. And if it means I have to leave this company, if it means I can't be in this school, if it means I can't get into a business contract with you, if it means that, then so be it. I have my deen. Brothers and sisters, this is very, very important, because you will be, right? Look it. You will be constantly tested. You will be constantly tested. Remember, the system is not made or built for us as Muslims. Look at the days that are off, both in school and typically at work. Which days are off?
Weekends.
Which days?
Saturday and Sunday.
Saturday is the Sabbath for Jewish people. Sunday is the holy day for the Christians. It's made for them. But Friday is our day. You gotta shake and move and maneuver and do what you gotta do, but Friday is your day. Lahum dinahum. It's easier for them because the system is facilitated, but you gotta make a choice. You have your deen. Lakum dinukum waliya deen. You have to. Is that clear, y'all? Do y'all understand that? And the same for our kids at school. Consider this, brothers and sisters. Many of most kids, on average, anywhere between 11, 13, even up to 14 and 15 years old, are hitting puberty. That means many of our daughters and sons, right, go to school and are at school on Jumu'ah. For our boys, when they're hitting puberty, once you hit puberty in Islam, you're a what?
Man.
You're a man. The concept of teenage years, that is not an Islamic concept. You are either a child or you are a man. You are either a child or a woman. That extra teenage years or whatever, that's a foreign concept to Islam. But at any rate, they're going to be in school, right? How many of our kids, they don't go for Jumu'ah? How many of them, 14 years old, 15 years old, 16 years old, some all throughout high school don't even go. Some in high school. Now, if they happen to go to a charter school, there's a lot of Muslims, they might have Jumu'ah. MashaAllah, some places they might have an MSA, but the overwhelming majority of our young people in our community, the overwhelming majority, right, from the time that they're children till the time that they're pretty much men and women, and even in the non-Muslim context, until they're 18 years old, many of them will only in the summer, only when there's a break, go to Jumu'ah. But it's still an obligation for them. It's still a requirement. And as a community, it's something that we're supposed to figure out. It's something that we're supposed to help them with, starting first and foremost with the parents. But I'm saying, right, we have to think about these things, because that's part of our deen. They have their deen. It happens to be that it's easier for them, but we got to figure, we have our own. And that means you have to do what? If we go back to the first thing I said, we got to be proud of our deen. We have to be like, nah, this is I need accommodations. Whether that means they need to make a space, whether that means they need to let you off campus, whether that means, whatever it is, you got to figure it out. Right? But this is a very powerful surah, brothers and sisters. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us, right, that the Muslims have a unique and distinct identity that is rooted in their faith and their worship. And that faith and that worship, we must be uncompromising. Uncompromising until death. Until death. You should never compromise when it comes to your faith and what you believe, and when it comes to your worship. And there is one last thing that I wanted to add, a definition for ibadah. And then when you see this definition, you will understand why we must be uncompromising in our ibadah. And even though other people might see like, what's the big deal? It's not that, right? We're just, we're just doing a little prayer for, you know what I'm saying? We're doing a prayer for Gaza. And we're Christians, and we're all coming and doing, what's the big deal if we just come together and do it? And you know what I'm saying? What's wrong with it? It's for the good of, So look, this definition is actually given by Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah. I almost forgot it, but I don't want to leave. This will be the last thing we mention today, inshaAllah. And it's in his book called Al-Ubudiyya, right? And he mentions, which means servitude. He says, the word al-ibadah, ismun jami' li kulli ma yuhibbu Allah wa yardah min al-aqwali wal-a'mali al-zahira wal-batina. That it is an encompassing noun. The word worship is an encompassing word that includes or encompasses everything that Allah loves. Everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. From statements and actions, hidden, or al-zahira wal-batina, those that are apparent and those that are hidden. And I'll repeat that. It is an encompassing noun, or an encompassing word, of everything that Allah loves, everything that He's pleased with, right? From statements and actions, those that are apparent and those that are hidden. So what does that mean? Anything that you do, that if Allah loves it, if He mentions it in the Quran favorably, right? Inna Allah yuhibbul muhsineen, Inna Allah yuhibbul mutahhirin. If Allah says, khalas, Allah loves those, and khalas. When you purify yourself, that act of wudu, tahara, ghusl, Allah loves that action. Because He mentions it, that He loves those people and who do that. Right? So anything that Allah loves, anything that He's pleased with, if Allah is happy with it, if Allah says that He likes that thing, or that it's good, khalas. That is ibadah. If He loves it or if He's pleased with it. Whether it's statements like reading the Quran, statements like dhikr, statements like saying positive things, statements like saying kind, good words to your wife or your children, or etc., or a wife saying to her husband, right? Whether it's you, whatever those statements are, if Allah loves them and is pleased with them, then it's an act of worship. Or whether it's an action that's apparent, like salah, like jihad, like seeking knowledge, like making da'wah, like etc. All those things, giving sadaqah, all of those things, those are apparent actions that people, if they saw you doing it, right? That's what we mean by it's an action and it's apparent. And Allah loves it and is pleased with it, then know for sure it's a what? It's an act of worship. Or if it's hidden. Well, how can you have statements and actions that are hidden? Does that mean hidden from, like, because I'm in my room and nobody sees me? No. He's speaking about actions of the heart. Love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is an action of the heart. Right? So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. They love, right, their idols and their gods or whatever, كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. The same like they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But those who believe, أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. They have a tremendous amount of, and they are far more deeply in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their love for Allah. أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. They love Allah more than anything else. But that is an act of the heart. Fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being afraid of Him, having trust in Him, having hope in his mercy, in his gentleness, in his kindness, in his compassion, in his grace, in his overlooking our mistake. All of that is where? In your heart. That's what, right? So you have actions of your heart, and then obviously you have actions of your limbs and your tongue. Right? So now, when you look at that definition that Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah he gives, you can see the gravity of how could I ever give any of that to anyone else? How could I give that to anybody else? That is like the deepest betrayal. That is the deepest betrayal. Allah has given me everything that I have, my iman, my children, the money that I have, the clothes on my back, the air that I breathe, everything is from Allah. And the fact that now I would go and take the one thing that He's telling me to do, the one thing He's saying, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Surah Al-Dhariyat? وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. That's the word. يَعْبُدُونَ is ibadah. The one thing that He's saying, my purpose in life, that I take that now and I give it to somebody else. It's the one thing He's saying, don't ever do that. That's why this surah is called Tawheed al-Ibadah, or excuse me, Ikhlas al-Ibadah. I don't give that to anybody else. Right? But I want y'all to remember that definition. Can anybody repeat it back to me so we can close this up, inshallah? The definition that Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah gave. Let's pretend like I don't speak Arabic. Tell me in English.
Anything that Allah loves and pleases Him.
From, and y'all can help him out. I mean, it's not an exam, you know what I'm saying?
Outward action.
But before that.
See.
From the mouth, from the lips.
Verbal.
Statements
Oh, yes.
and the actions, whether they are
See.
apparent or seen, right? Or if they're hidden. And by hidden we mean actions of the heart.
Could you repeat the Arabic?
No, it's ismun jami' لكل ما يحب الله ويرضاه من الأقوال والأعمال الظاهرة والباطنة. And that's in his book Al-Ubudiyya. And you can probably find it other, where he probably mentions it in other places too. Play it. So, in summary, brothers and sisters, we learn from this surah. Number one is the importance of being proud of our faith. Right? The importance of being proud of our faith. Right? And not being shy. And not running away from some of those aspects that may not be politically correct, or that some people, they might not like it. Right? Like I said, it is what it is. Allah said it. It's not, I'm not saying it. It's Allah who said it. I'm simply saying what He said. Who am I to say something different than what my Creator told me to say? Who am I to say something different than what my messenger, Prophet Muhammad said? But we need to be proud. This is important, brothers and sisters, especially for those of you who are older, especially for those of you who are married, especially those of you who are parents. It is very important because if your faith is weak, undoubtedly, right? If you're a husband, right? Oftentimes, as the leader of the household, it will impact everybody else who's under you. Your wife, your kids, and especially the children. It's very likely that if your faith is weak, and you're not proud, and you're shy about your faith, and you're always trying to hide it, and cover it up, and assimilate, and blend in, what do you think your children are going to do?
The same.
Most likely. It's not guaranteed, but oftentimes that's how it is, right? Play it. The other thing is, brothers and sisters, is the importance of following the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad in our daily routines, right? Like the Prophet mentioned, or like we mentioned how the Prophet used to use this surah or recite this surah before going to sleep, and he taught his companions to do the same. And then also during Hajj, and then also in his Sunnah. So broadly speaking, the importance of following the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, right? And of course, those two things, being proud of your Islam, confident in your Islam, and following the Sunnah of the Prophet, that can't truly happen unless you are learning your deen. So the other thing is, brothers and sisters, the importance of learning your religion. That does not mean that all of us have to become muftis and sheikhs and scholars, etc. But everybody, every single Muslim without exception. It doesn't matter if you're an Uber driver. It doesn't matter if you have, you know what I'm saying, are a minimum wage worker. It doesn't matter if you are a business owner. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor or a lawyer. It doesn't matter if you're a housewife and you're taking care of your children. It doesn't matter if you're a husband, single. Everybody should be learning their deen. It is a religious, sacred duty. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. Seeking sacred knowledge is a duty upon every Muslim. It's why we have this class, where we're going through the Tafsir of Amma, because you're reading these surah on a daily basis. We should all be familiar with them, right? It's why we had the class before this was the 40 Hadith of Imam Nawawi that we taught here. Why? Because it focuses on the fundamentals, the things that you gotta know as a Muslim. And then for those who want more, there's more. There's more sophistication, there's more depth, there's more breadth. The scholars of Islam, they describe it as being al-bahr la sahil laha, that it is an ocean that has no shores. It's endless. But you gotta dip your feet in there. Every Muslim gotta dip their feet in that ocean. Are you gonna go deep diving, swimming, and scuba diving and going deep in there, pulling out gems and pearls? Maybe not everybody. But you gotta put your feet in there. Everybody has to. And in that way, the more you learn, the more you can follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And then, of course, the more you know, the more confident you are, and the more you can be proud of your Islam. Now, and then I think inshaAllah we'll close here. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
One question.
Yeah, inshaAllah. We can just stop this first, inshaAllah, and then we'll do that. Fadl, go ahead, Akhi.
Based on the definition